Girl About Library, and I'm here with my reading wrap-up for the month of September. September was a pretty full month for me. Sometimes months go by and you're like, holy crap, how is it already X month? I don't feel that way. I feel like September was really full and I'm excited for October. I read 5 books in the month of September, but I also read my first graphic novel, so that was a really neat new experience to have. And while 5 books isn't a huge reading month for me, pages-wise, I'm pretty proud. Like, I had a good month for reading. I read the longest book that I think I've read this entire year this month. And in the month of September, I read 1,948 pages. Over 30 days on average, that's about 64 pages a day. So I'm happy with that. Like, I'm good with that. I'm actually trying to not focus on the number of books that I read and focus more on pages because I don't want to be scared off from big books. And I didn't even include the graphic novel in the total for pages either, so it was a good month for reading. I'm going to go through these books in the order that I read them. First up was Landline by Rainbow Rowell, and I gave that book 5 stars. Landline is just, it's such a cute book, and I have such warm fuzzy feelings talking about it because it was the first book I finished in the month of September, so it feels like I read it forever ago, but I still have warm fuzzies when I talk about it. Super quick plot summary of Landline. Landline is about a character named Georgie McCool who has a special place in my heart. I just love her. She is a screenwriter in Los Angeles, and she is married with 2 daughters. Her husband, though, is from Nebraska, and for Christmas, she and her 2 daughters and her husband are supposed to go to Nebraska, but then a writing opportunity comes up, and Georgie decides to stay in Los Angeles. Her husband, though, decides to take the 2 girls to Nebraska. Georgie has a little bit of a nervous breakdown. She's staying at her mom's house, and while she's there, she calls her husband. And in the course of the conversation, she realizes that she's not talking to her present day husband. She is talking to her husband from 15 years ago. And this keeps happening. So every night she goes to her mom's house to stay and she has a conversation with her husband from 15 years ago. I was so impressed with, Rainbow Rowell to me is an amazing author. I will read anything that she has written. I just love her books. But I was so impressed with how well that part of the storyline was handled because I'm not someone who has an easy time suspending disbelief, but Rainbow just totally captured my imagination with this storyline, and I never once felt well, this is ridiculous, obviously she can't call her husband in the past. I was fine with it. I totally accepted it as the premise of the book, and it worked. It was just really interesting how it all tied back in together, and every time I read one of her books, I just feel like this is supposed to be a movie. They have this very cinematic feel to them. I like this book too because it's kind of a fun winter read. It's set at Christmas, and so I don't have that many of those that I enjoy, and this is definitely a new favorite for that. I also have a 60-second book review for Landline, which I will link above and below. Next up is Dark Matter, somewhere in this stack. Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I gave this book 5 stars as well. Dark Matter is a book that I picked up from Book of the Month Club. If you are not a Book of the Month Club member, I definitely recommend it. It is a super economical way to get nice new hardcover books sent to your house every month. I heard a ton about this book during the summer because that is when it came out and it was huge. Everyone was talking about it, but my TBR list was just insane and I didn't get to it until now, and I totally get it. This is one of those books that has a ton of hype, and I think it is totally earned. It deserves all of the recognition. Dark Matter is about a man named Jason. He is a father and a university professor. One night he goes out to get a drink with some friends, and on his way home he is hit over the head and knocked unconscious. When he wakes up, he is kidnapped, essentially. When he comes to, he wakes up in a research facility, and he is still Jason. People still call him Jason. He still looks like Jason, and parts of his life are the same. He's still in science, but he's an alternate reality version of Jason. His wife isn't his wife. His child was never born, and this book explores all of the different branchings off of the decisions that we make. So basically the concept of the book is that every time you make a choice, there's another version of you who made the other choice. There's another version of Katie who did not read Dark Matter. The plotting of this book is just so good. If you enjoy thrillers, you will really enjoy this book. Also, if you're into science fiction at all, I think you'll enjoy this book. I was really surprised how well the author handled the science fiction elements of this book, because it could definitely get messy. If you've seen Interstellar and were at all confused during that movie like I was, there are moments where, because alternate realities and all of that it's messy and it can be confusing. But I never felt that way reading this book. The author did such a good job plotting it and keeping it as straightforward, but also, I don't know, it's hard to describe. There's more here as far as science than I expected, and I'm totally impressed by this book. Get all the hype, 5 stars. If you haven't read it, you should. The book after that I read was Sold to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. I gave this book 4 stars, but looking back on it, it's somewhere between 3 and 4 stars to me. I didn't enjoy this book as much as I thought I was going to, but there are definitely things about it that it's one of those books I didn't enjoy that much, but I can see why other people really do. Sold to the Sea is YA historical fiction, and it is about 4 characters who are all fleeing East Prussia. 3 of the characters are refugees, and one of them is a German soldier who is working on the boat. And I have a 60-second book review for this, but I don't think that I have put it out there yet. So if you're watching this in the future, I will link it above and below. If you're watching this as soon as I publish it, it's not out yet. There were some things that I really enjoyed about this book. I think that the constantly shifting perspectives was a neat choice. The perspective shifts every 2 to 3 pages, and so it was more exciting of a read than I anticipated it being. But the shifting perspectives also, I feel like, made it less emotional of a read than I anticipated. I don't know what I really thought I was gonna find in this book, but it was enjoyable to read. It didn't reach 5-star level for me, for sure. Yeah, it was okay. Next up is The Best Kind of People by Zoe Whittle, and I gave this book 3 stars. For me though, this book was between 2 and 3 stars as far as enjoyment, and I tend to round up just because I'm nice like that. But yeah, this is a book about a typical suburban family, and the dad is a teacher, and he is accused of having an inappropriate relationship, inappropriately touching, having inappropriate conversations with several of his students. I was really intrigued by the premise of this book because I wanted to see how the author was going to handle what is a pretty sensitive topic, and I just found this book really underwhelming for me. I didn't like where it went as far as how the characters handled their father being accused of this, and how quickly the characters believed that their father had done this without there actually being any reason for them to immediately believe that he could be capable of something like this. It felt very strange. Something felt off. The book was also way more sexual in a way than I had anticipated, and that's not something that I love in books anyway, but this in particular was just kind of took me off guard and was not what I was expecting, and so I did not enjoy this read, and I wouldn't recommend it. Next up is Stitches, which is a graphic novel that I read this month for the I Suck at Readathon's Readathon. Oh, I should let you know that went well. I completed most of the goals for the I Suck at Readathon's Readathon. I'm still not super into Twitter. That didn't happen for me, but I've gained a lot of confidence as far as readathons go, and I'm excited to participate in more in the future. One of the good things that came out of it was a graphic novel. I haven't read one of these in a really long time, and I picked up Stitches by David Small. The illustrations and Stitches are done in watercolor, and they're just really, really neat. I really enjoyed this. It is super dark, but it is a memoir of David Small's life. It is about his youth, and for most of it is about his younger years, and then like the end is about his time as an adult so far. But it was real dark, y'all. And I hesitate to it's hard to explain the plot without giving away a lot of the darkness, but David Small did not have a great experience growing up, and I guess the way that I would sum up, how do I do this? I think the way that I would explain this is just that in fiction books, when there are twists, it's exciting, and you think like, ooh, that's really cool how the author did that. Like, that was a neat choice. In nonfiction, when there are twists like that, it doesn't feel the same. It feels cutting and scary, and you definitely got a sense for that reading Stitches. There were twists in David Small's life, which was already rough. I mean, his parents are not kind, and I was just really taken with that when I was reading it, that if this were a fiction book, I would think like, ooh, that was like interesting how the author did that, and reading it in nonfiction, I felt awful for him. And some of the things that he found out weren't even necessarily bad things to find out, but it was how he found out that just makes you feel awful. I think also just reading this as a parent was hard, because so much of the bad things that happened in his life could have been prevented with good parenting, and it broke my heart a little bit. But it also showed me that, I mean, graphic novels can pack as much punch for me emotionally as a fiction novel, and if someone was looking for a darker graphic novel read, this would definitely be at the top of my list. The last book I read in the month of September, and the reason why I read so many pages, was The Lives of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. This is a hefty tome. There are 499 pages in this book, but like even the pages, there are a lot of words. And so this was like my Everest this month. I was determined to read this book by the end of September. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. I fell asleep on September 30th and finished this book on October 1st, but we're gonna count it as a September read. It's so hard to summarize this book because it is so long and there's so much plot to it, but Locke is a thief. He is adopted at a young age by someone who trains thieves, and when he's adopted by this thief maker, it's determined that like he is like a prodigy thief. Like, he's so good at stealing things, but he has absolutely no like common sense with what he's stealing and the things that he is doing in order to make his heists happen. And so the person who originally adopted him gives him to a priest, and he continues to work as a thief, just kind of like at a higher level. And the book jumps between his time as a child and young adult, like developing his thieving skills, and his adulthood with like one particular heist. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. It's another one of those books that like I get why other people like it so much, but it's just not for me. I think if you like really long books or you really appreciate world building, this is a great book to read. I'm not so much like that. I like my books usually under 400 pages, and I just got so bogged down and bored with the lengthy descriptions of like just the inner world of Comore, which is where the book is set. There were some things that I really liked about the book. Let's focus on those. I really liked the character development. I really liked Locke and what the author did with the character development there. I also liked that this book was fantasy, but it didn't have that many fantasy elements. So I think I probably would not have finished it if it had, and that definitely helped me get through it. There aren't tons of like fairies and magic and like magical elements. There's a couple, and I can suspend disbelief for that, but it wasn't like an overwhelming amount. And so those are some things that I liked about it. I couldn't get over the length. I couldn't get over the lengthy like world building descriptions. But I am glad that I read it, but I don't think I'll continue in the series. So that's it for my September wrap up. Those are the books that I read in the month of September. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more bookish content. Have a great day.